Welcome, dear participants, at our third webinar from our series AI for Customer Service. Today, Olga and I will talk about how to implement AI and not mess up. So first, as always, a quick introduction of us as speakers. So my name is Dennis Holovatyi. I'm a data scientist and the founder of Enterprise AI Consulting. And I'm working, well, as a data scientist and implementing projects mostly on ERP and CRM data, in different functional areas such as customer service, procurement, production planning, accounting, and so on many IT systems, primarily ERP, CRM data. And that's what I do. Very focused on business cases and on the business usage, not just on the machine learning models. And happy to present my knowledge to you today. Olga?
Hello, dear participants. Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here also. So I'm a digital analytics expert with double master degree in library science and information management. And as a freelancer for digital analytics, I've been working already for 7 years with different customers such as Daimler, Audi, Red Bull, Esprit, Sport One, and I'm really passionate about showing the customers the power of analytics and accelerating their business with data-driven decisions. And my portfolio as an analyst includes everything starting from requirement gathering and creating tracking documentation, helping to implement these tracking solutions such as Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, the German tool WebTrack, to creating of reports and helping customers to take the action. So, and I'm also very excited to share my knowledge today with you.
All right, cool, Olga. Thanks a lot. Well, let's jump into the agenda. As you know, I keep it pretty simple. Four bullet points as usual. First, we'll go through the recap of AI use cases and technologies and customer service, basically recap of the content of the first 2 webinars for those of you who have missed them. Also, you can request PDFs from Pau if you want to have a look. In the second part, we will talk about the juicy stuff, of course, about how to implement the methodology, how the data science analytics process look like, and how to build a team to do that. In the third part, we will conduct the interview with Olga, our expert, and in the last part, we'll have a look at the next steps on what you need to do to actually implement AI. So let's jump in. Recap, what did we learn last week? On Monday and Wednesday, we had our webinars. So first of all, we had a look why AI is important and why today. Well, this big number of $15.7 trillion is the amount of value that AI is predicted to create in the global economy until 2030. And as you see, it's a huge number. So from the business perspective, it's very important. And from the technological perspective, the advances of AI technology and analytics have reached the point when it actually does have many of the business relevant use cases. Also, we have spoken about different points of view on customer service. So what interests you in it and how you can look at customer service. So there are viewed customer service as a business process, as a conversation, as a document, such as ticket or request, or as a cost center, as a P&L line. And those understandings of customer service can help you to find different analytical use cases in your customer service department. We had a look also at the some of the use cases and the steps in the process that result in different AI potential, such as creation of the ticket can be balanced through a chatbot response and incident history with a particular customer's assignment of the ticket can be augmented by auto-tagging or urgency detection to avoid multi-hops. Progress of the ticket or the actual work of it can be assisted with the knowledge base, digital assistants, and so on. Escalation of the ticket can be managed by AI, for example, through major incident detection. And the resolution of the ticket can be predicted, the timing, for instance, how it can occur. This was the overall picture of the customer service process and the use cases. And on this slide, to recap those use cases that we had an in-depth look into, those were prediction of resolution times, urgency detection, voice analyses, upsells predictions, as well as chatbots for better response times. That was the content from the first webinar. From the second webinar, we had a lot of content on technology, about different data sources such as IT service management systems, ERP, CRM, analytics, MES systems, and so on. IoT and industrial IoT data, such as and as well as the data from different devices. We have spoken extensively, well, not extensively about 5G, I just mentioned it, but we've spoken extensively about ETL and data jobs, about different kinds of databases that you can use for analytics, with use cases and suggestions when to use each of them, as well as on the data analytics and AI part. We have spoken about how AI actually comes into play, how to analyze data with AI, different frameworks and solutions for that. We have spoken quite a lot about chatbots with Anna and Mercedes, our previous speakers, as well as about process mining in our view of the customer service process. That was it for the recap. If you have still some questions from the past webinars, you can just write them in the Q&A. We'll try to have a look at them at the end of the presentation. But for now, I would say let's jump into the most important part of today's session, how to implement AI. And the overview on the slide shows you what we'll be talking about. It's going to be methodology, what is the general principles of implementing AI projects, and what are the differences to maybe some other types of IT projects. We will speak about the data science process, about different stages and what you have to pay attention to at those stages, as well as I will give you a short calculation, exemplary calculation of the business case for AI, as well as talk about the team constellation and so on. So the first question that you might ask then would be like, well, why do I need that? If I know already about the use case that I want to implement, if I know about technology, why can't I just go and do that? Well, the thing is that AI has reached the point in maturity where it can generate P&L relevant value in customer service or other departments. But to realize this potential, you actually need to know the basics of project execution and methodology, because they are a little bit different than normal IT projects. For example, in the matter that you need to prepare the data, which you usually don't need to do with a normal IT project, let's say. Also, while building different kinds of models, doing exploratory analytics and so on, you may encounter some problems with your data that you didn't know before. Essentially, analytical and AI projects, they have much larger component of experimentation, which means that, well, you need to do just that. You need to experiment, you need to try out different things, different models, different approaches and frameworks, which sometimes makes it more difficult. At the same time, to avoid difficulties and to know that they are there and to plan for them, you need to understand where they are. You need to understand the methodology and the process. That's the reason we talk about it. So let me present the methodology that I follow in my projects. It's pretty simple. You can say typical consulting methodology, but still very useful. It has 4 main steps. In the first one, you need to understand what is AI. What is the market of analytics, which application options, and other questions you need to encounter. And congratulations, you are kind of through with that step. By the end of this webinar, you will be more or less through with that step, at least for the area of customer service, because the webinars that we have gone through, this is the 4th one, actually, that we do with Outvise, they pretty much cover everything that you need to kick off your first project. We have spoken about the use cases, about how to find them in your company. We have spoken about technology, different platforms and tools, how to do analytics. And today we will go to the last piece of the puzzle about the project management and the process of analytics. So by the end of the seminar, you will be done with the first stage. In the second stage, you will need to discover. And what discover? Basically 2 things, the AI, let's say data landscape of your company, basically the IT systems, data sources, and data quality that you have in the company, as well as the specific use cases for your enterprise. Because the use cases that I have presented, those 5, for example, from the presentation on Monday last week, those were examples. Those were the use cases that are possible, that I've done, but it's not necessarily fit into your enterprise. So you need to understand where is the biggest value potential in your customer service department and in your company. And you will build some kind of portfolio of those use cases and work with them. In the implementation phase, well, you do the implementation. You actually build the data product. You track some events that you need. You collect data. You extract it from the source systems. You transform the data. You build the models, visualizations, and you take action on it. And then in the last stage of the evaluation stage, you have a look at the KPIs that you have defined in the beginning, and you see how they changed, if they improved or not. What is the business case that you have been able to realize from your AI project, and what do you want to do next? Keep that in mind. This kind of flywheel is the basis of the presentation. So understand, discover, implement, and evaluate is the cycle, the methodology cycle that leads you to success in your AI implementation. Let's talk a little bit about the AI knowledge. So why it is so important, why we have given so much information about the use cases and the AI market in the very first webinar. Well, there are 4 different things, parts of knowledge that I like to define. The first one is the most general one about the AI market, about its size, about value creation of AI. I have given you some exemplary numbers about that in the very first webinar as well, about how quickly it's developing in the second webinar, and AI market is growing 270% year over year in the past 4 years, according to Gartner, if I'm not mistaken. And it is big. I mean, for many companies, the problem is that they want to have some kind of confidence in the maturity of technology, and AI market has reached its maturity to some extent. It's not as developed, let's say, as the market of I don't know, housing, real estate, of course, but the market itself is 150 billion big. It's growing very fast, and it has tremendous value creation potential. About the AI basics, we have spoken also in the very first webinar about the technological implications. I gave many examples of what AI is capable of doing already today, how it relates to statistics, that many analytical algorithms, they are basically statistics on steroids. And mostly we have spoken about AI as a business accelerator, how you can do something about your business with artificial intelligence. We have spoken a lot about the use cases as well in the webinar last week, in different industries as well as functions, such as customer service, of course, which is the main topic of this series, but as well as accounting, procurement, and plant maintenance, and so on in the very first webinar. And the main topic of today's webinar about the knowledge is the implementation, as I mentioned. So let's keep going with that in mind. So AI in business has a couple of things that are important in the identification phase or discovery phase. You have a couple of things to do to evaluate the use cases, to find the right technology, to find the right talent and decide on the technology. And there are some kind of special areas such as business objectives, the use case portfolio, and the KPIs. In the implementation phase, you need to know the data landscape, the process, and the project plan. Those are kind of the building blocks of your application of AI in business. And with that, I would like to give a word to Olga, and she will quickly tell you about how to define the measurement model and what is necessary.
Yes, thank you, Dennis. So I will talk from my experience, which I do as a best practice with my customers. And since I'm doing the digital analytics, I will be focusing, like in my example, on those examples which you can track from your website or app. So what is necessary to do, and why are we doing this at all? So Dennis already explained. So you need to define the whole infrastructure of your process, and I call it like a measurement model. And here are some steps that we as data people normally have to take together with business. So the first, the most important step is to define business objectives. So basically, that's the question to the business, to management and CEO level. Why this business exists, why our website, our product exists. So what is our goal? What do we want to achieve with this business? So for example, we will take the generating leads. So we want to generate leads with this business, among other goals, which can be like revenue growth or grow brand awareness and so on and so forth. And then you break down it by goals, and you have to identify crisp goals for each business objective. And here also management takes a big part in this, and normally you can have different goals within one big objective. For example, if you want to generate leads as an objective, then the goal will be you want to capture leads, and then you have to continue with defining the key performance indicators. This is the next question. The previous questions were like the what questions, and the key performance indicators is like a why question, like not why but how question. So you have to define them. It's a very goal-based feature. So if you say you want to capture leads, how you capture leads on your website? You are gathering emails, you are counting the chat requests, or the filled out forms. There are many different ways to capture those leads. So you seen that your key performance indicator is, for example, newsletter subscriptions or chat requests, but you also should think that you don't have to only think about the absolute numbers, like how many chat requests were there, because it's very difficult to make any decisions based on just absolute numbers. Because if you know, okay, today we had just like 100 new chat requests, it's like, so what question? You always need to put your KPI in a relation. So you want to know, for example, how many chat requests were in comparison to all visitors today, or all visits. So you always think in percentages or relations and such, not absolute numbers as KPIs. And then the most tricky question normally in all businesses is to define targets for those KPIs, because just to know what you want to measure is not enough. You want to understand, okay, what is good for me or what is bad. It's just like as an indicator. If I know that I reached today, for example, 100 chat requests, is it good for me or is it bad? And on this step, I normally advise to check the market benchmark, so you can compare with competitors, which KPIs, which measurements do they have, if they give them public, if you know from some official articles, or you just analyze your own benchmark in the past, or what you expect. Or for example, you can also have some values that you've planned to achieve, and they can be your target. And then you can understand, if I'm not getting these numbers, what can I do? What can I adjust? Which actions can I take? And the last part is to define segments of people, behavior, and outcomes. You can always slice and dice those KPIs also in this point of view. So for example, you take a segment of people who are coming through newsletter, or who are coming from your social media campaign on your website. Or for example, you did product sale and there was a campaign and you're tracking a tracking code, and you just want to see how those people performing who coming from this campaign on your KPIs. So then you have a very defined and lean structure of your measurement model, because you came from the very general, very big business objective and broke it down to goals, KPIs, targets, and segments. And then when you get the data, you know how to analyze it, you know how to take it, and what it will be telling to you. So can you please, switch to the next one. And here I prepared you some examples of customer service related KPIs. And a key performance indicator is a measurable value that demonstrates how effectively a company is achieving key business objectives. You can always say, let's define a KPIs and see what are we measuring, but always I have to say that you also need to think about everything else, the whole infrastructure. So sure, it's not only the KPI that we're measuring, for example, on the website or in the app. You always need to think about, have you hired the right people? Did you give them the right training? Do they know how to talk to your customers? And did you give them the powerful and effective tools? And then if you have the whole good setup in the background, sure, you can measure KPIs and analyze how your business is performing. So the first and probably the most known KPI is Net Performance Score. And this KPI is saying basically how likely customers will be recommending your product or your services to their friends, to their peers. And this is one of the customer loyalty KPIs, and normally it's rated like from 0 to 10 or from 0 to 100%. And if you grade later those, evaluate later the answers, you will get the promoters, those who have chosen from 9 to 10. You have the passives if they have chosen 7 to 8, and detractors if they have chosen from 0 to 6. And then you can have those groups of people, and you know, like, what do you want to achieve with each group, and maybe you can also target them if you want to make this score better. Another one, also very important KPI, is customer satisfaction rate, and it answers the question, how would you rate your overall satisfaction with the product service that you have received? And here we have to proactively ask the customers on the website, and it costs only 1 click for a customer, and it's quite an easy thing, but many big companies, they forget to ask the customers. They try to overanalyze the data instead of just asking their customers, how do you feel about our service? How do you, are you satisfied or not? And it's also important to understand that this KPI is not only saying something about the product that the customer just bought, or the service, or anything that you just provided the customer on your website, for example. It's also saying like how customers are feeling about your whole business. So you can just take it and judge completely about like one thing. You also suggest to keep an eye when you're analyzing the customer satisfaction rate, also the customer retention rate. So how often do they come again and engage there with your website, with your product, with your service, and also the conversion rate KPI. So it also should be put together in a relation. What else we have here? So on the right side, you see active and resolved issues. So it's also important if you can track it on the website, or you can also not only use the classical digital analytics using Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics. You can use also other systems to gather this data about your customers. So if you have many open issues and they are higher than the resolved issues, maybe it's a sign for you to hire more people, to give them better training, or to adjust something. So this KPI can also have a big influence on your customer satisfaction rate, because if they don't get their problems resolved in quite a short time, they may trade also your service and product worse. Then we have in the middle number of acquired reviews. So it's also an interesting metric. So it's not only about the quality of our reviews, but also here is a number, like how likely people give you a review. And from my experience, I'm sure you also know that probably like 1 over 10 satisfied customer really write a review. So normally people unfortunately write negative reviews, and for you as a business, as actually a challenge and also a goal to encourage your customers to give you a positive review. So you can promise them a discount, or give them discount better even, or you can also, you know, like give a pop-up window when they are just engage with your product, so they can give you a review, and you can get those positive reviews and analyze also what can you do better, or what is the most strong feature, and what are you already doing good. And the last one here from examples is failed searches rate, or like 0 searches rate. It's if you have an search engine built in your website, and you can analyze it, what customers are actually looking for on your website. You can also analyze not only like how often the search was failed and they couldn't be satisfied with your content of your website. Maybe it's not the problem of the website, maybe it's a problem of the search engine. So you have also to analyze like why those searches fail. And one of the possibilities is to analyze those keywords. What were they searching and they didn't find? Maybe you also need to put it on the website. Maybe they name it in another way, and that's why they're not finding. Or building those KPIs, you can also make them customer service better by providing the needed content, needed products, and so on and so forth on your website. So it's very also a good way to understand your customers. And also, not only digital analytics, as I said, is a helpful tool to measure those KPIs. There are also non-digital analytics KPIs, as I call them. So, for example, you can think on abandon rate of calls and chats with your customers, or average resolution time. Here is about the resolution time of ticket resolution. So, if there is a problem, a request, or something from your customers, you can also track this time, how quickly your support team is able to resolve the requirements of your customers. Also, you can measure some money values, for example, as a cost per call or any contact. If you know how much, for example, your employees' time cost, and you can break it down and calculate everything. Or, for example, also you can estimate the training investment per employee. That's also a part of this, maybe called cost per call KPI. Also, there is average after call work time, if you really want to dig deep, and you can also analyze this. Or, for example, wait time for callers. So, for example, how long people in average have to sit in a queue before they get to talk to someone from the customer service. So there are plenty of useful KPIs, but you always have to think, why are you doing this, and what exactly you want to measure, and what will you do with this data?
Exactly. And with this kind of information, you would be actually through the first step in the data science process, which would be to understand the business problem. So as Olga has spoken about identifying the objectives and the KPIs, implementing also tracking that you need to measure those, that would be the first step in your process that you need to take to understand where the journey goes. As you mentioned repeatedly, it is really important to understand why you're doing that, because currently many companies, not many, but some companies, let's say, they're implementing analytics and AI just to have it, because it's a hype topic and everybody's doing that. Well, guess what? That's kind of a recipe for a failure, because if you don't know why you need that, it's hard to succeed. I mean, maybe in the discovery process, you will actually find a clear business case, but it's important to understand that your business has to strive for something, and this goal has to be technologically aligned with analytics. When you have that, then you can start the process. And the first step would be to understand your business problem from the data perspective. The next step in the process would be actually to get the data. Coming back to the technology webinar from the past week, that would be extracting your data from the IT service management system, for example, or extracting the data from the web analytics interface through the API. Could be extracting data from the chatbot conversations, or integrating other data sources, which could be many, not necessarily only within your company. There's also, of course, possibility to integrate third-party data sources. I don't know, I was doing analytics, for example, on the efficiency of Google AdWords, and we've been analyzing how weather affects the efficiency, and there was a small but significant effect of rain, I think, or humidity in general, on how well the ads perform. So this is also something to keep in mind. The next step, you need to clean and prepare the data. Many people underestimate how long the step can take. They think, oh, we'll just load data, replace some zero values, and we're going to be fine. The problem is that depending on the cleanliness of your data, this step can take a long time. Essentially, the data extraction, preparation, and storage, and so on, basically the data engineering tasks, they can take anything between 60 to 80% of the work of the data scientist. And after that, you would explore the data. So you would build some basic dashboards. You would look at descriptive statistics of your data, maybe even build some baseline models, very simple models, let's say linear regressions, to have some basic understanding of where the main trends in your data go for. In the next step, the real AI part, so to say, comes in, where you would prototype machine learning models. You would test them in real environment and adapt them if necessary. You may need to retrain them. You may need to adopt the output that they're giving, or kind of how the user interacts with them. And you would need also, of course, to present model results to basically show to the main user group what the model does and how it works and so on. Here, for example, the question of explainability comes into play. People are often concerned about deep learning models in particular because they're hard to explain, and there are different ways to try to do that, to trace back the particular decision that the model has made or not. But the thing is that still it's hard to explain why a deep learning model has made a prediction and came to a conclusion. It is easier with some other models in classical machine learning, such as decision trees, for example. With decision trees or random forests, which is also the tree ensemble model, you can aggregate which kind of features were the most important for a particular decision. At the same time, while explainability may look simpler with linear regression or with the random forest, for example, it's not always actually the case, because in linear regressions, quite often different interaction terms are used, basically multiplying or doing different arithmetic operations on different columns in your data, and those can sometimes be crazy. In one of the models back at the university, I was using a model that had trend variable cubed, if I'm not mistaken, squared or cubed, and trend variable is basically your month. It's your sequential day or month, which doesn't make sense to square it or cube it. Like, mathematically speaking, it doesn't make any sense, but it was a significant coefficient in the model. So you have to understand that a simpler model doesn't always means robust explainability, and you have to understand that a complex and not so explainable model may have other benefits to your business, such as higher prediction accuracy, for example. And this part is where you would employ a machine learning engineer or a data scientist to do work, because prototyping machine learning models and testing them is the part that also takes a lot of time. It's also probably the most unpredictable part in the process, because you never know what's going to work. When you're testing one model against another, you have to actually test them. You have to train them and run them to see what is the result. Because even for very similar use cases on different data sets with different customers, like it's almost never the case that like there's a similar data set and the same model performs exactly as well as for the other customers' data set. So that's where a lot of training comes into. I'm trying also to refer the question from the Outvise forum that I've received a couple of days ago about the cost of data science projects. This is kind of the variable part of the cost, because it's hard to estimate how long it will take and how much effort you need to invest in there. Also, it's the part where the infrastructure costs are not exactly clear, because to train the model, you need to use compute capacity, usually in the cloud, often in the cloud, even if it's a private cloud in your premises, and that costs money. So this is the part that is relatively hard to estimate. At the same time, there are rule of thumbs, of course. Like if you would train 5 models, for example, of different model class, it is likely that one of them will perform well enough, let's say, on the specific data set. So you don't need to train every possible model with every possible set of parameters, but you have to keep that in mind while doing your project planning for data science. And well, after all the project planning, after you've gone through the process, you defined your objectives, you got data, you cleaned it, explored, you build the models, the last step is to take action. And actions can be pretty different depending on which kind of judgment your model has taken based on the data that you have. And I'll invite Olga to speak a little bit about the taking action part.
Thank you. Yes, taking action is the most interesting part in this process, I think. And if you have done your homework, all the previous work in a proper way, it's quite simple and easy. And especially if you have defined the right KPIs, if you measured the right, captured the right data, and if you also know those target values. I can say from my experience, it's the most tricky part. Like it's mostly those targets are left by businesses like, okay, let's gather the data and then we will see what we get and then we will make decisions. But it's very difficult when you actually get the data and then you are like unsure, is it what I expected? Is it good enough? Is it bad? So it's really, really, really essential to think about the targets ahead. So preparation is the key, and if you have defined your measurement model and you know why you're doing all this data gathering and difficult analysis, then you know what actions to take, basically, because you already thought about it. And the golden rule is here also that analysts or any data people, they are showing the results. So we are presenting what have we gathered, what are the results of those models, what are the dashboards from digital analytics. We are showing those KPIs and the data, and the business is taking the action. So sometimes the expectation is that the analyst will come and say like, okay, now you have to change the product, need to do this, this and that. Sure, we are absolutely obligated to give some suggestions because we know where the data comes from, we can explain it and prepare it in a good way, but the last step belongs to the business, so business takes the action. The next one, please. So yeah, and the examples of possible actions are, for example, you can expand your knowledge base. Yeah, if you feel that something was missing, this is the easiest way to do this. Then you can also adapt the service offering. So by this, you can see that customers were not finding something on your website, they were not satisfied with something, so you can adapt and expand and adjust the offering so they are more satisfied and are likely also to suggest your services to other potential customers. Also, you can fix the website if you find that something is not working in the proper way, not the way you expected, or you are becoming a feedback from customers, they were not satisfied with some features or they were missing them. Also, you can train the team. Basically, if customers are not getting the support in the way that they're expecting, or it's not fast enough, you can see it by, for example, those resolved and open issues or tickets, this KPI we talked about. You can understand, okay, my team needs some training, I need to upgrade their skill set. You can also understand that you need to adjust the project management, so that some processes are probably not smooth enough, or there are some misunderstanding in the background, and through this, customers are not getting the best service and the best support they could. So there are different areas of possible actions. It's not everything focused on your product and your website. You can see that you have to think quite broad about the actions which are possible to take after you get the valuable data.
All right. Thanks, Olga. I will quickly jump then into the approach that I often use, most of the time use, to actually kick off the AI journey, to kind of run through this process once. This is a pilot project, and you probably remember I have presented this in the very first webinar. So I will just remind you quickly how to run a pilot. There are a couple of things to look for. First is interfaces between departments is often important, for example, between customer service and sales, because those cross sections, often some inefficiencies are created. And also you have to look for outdated business models where you involve a lot of manual work, and this work is high volume. You have to remember that for the pilot, you don't need to establish the fully fledged data connection. Usually one-time data extract is sufficient. Also, I would prefer low effort setup, like using databases that you already have, using the tools that you already have, not reinventing the wheel every time. And most importantly, following a high value business case. That is for your company the most important one. It should be strategically aligned and of course operationally important for you. How you can do that? Well, you need a couple of people to execute this kind of project. You need a cloud engineer that would set up an analytical database for you that works with AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and knows about database management. You would need a digital analyst that would gather business requirements, measurements, do the reporting, that would work with analytical tools, and would know something about project management. You, of course, need a data engineer who would set up data jobs and build the model, validate the data, who's proficient in ETL, SQL, Python, and Docker containers, as well as a data scientist who would build the machine learning models and know something about Python, scikit-learn, statistics, of course, and machine learning. This would be your kind of go-to team when you want to kick off a project. Of course, depending on the project, if it's an IoT, you need an IoT analyst as well. Sometimes you might need also a designer. Sometimes you might need an additional project manager. But I would say this is kind of the core of the team that is needed almost all the time. Second. Yes, and about the business case that this team can achieve while working together, there are 4 elements to the business case that I like to talk about. First of all is, of course, the money perspective, the cost reduction or revenue growth that you can achieve. But not less important is the possibility to create new products or services, is to improve the quality and service that you deliver to your customers, as well as to achieve user acceptance. And here are your internal users meant that people working with your AI-based solution are fine with that and want to use that. And yeah, business case is an interesting thing, and I decided in this webinar to present you with the example calculation that you can do on your AI use case to understand, well, where is the money? And for example, if you're thinking about efficiency, there are a couple of categories, of course, of business cases that you can calculate. And you think about efficiency, you can think about the formula as, well, my business case is the number of unwanted actions that I have to take in my customer service department, multiplied by the average time that I spent on these actions, multiplied by the full-time employee cost per minute, and multiplied by the improvement potential that I can achieve with the AI. And in this example calculation, if you have, for example, 20,000 multi-hops changes in the assignment groups per year, and each one reduces the time, increases the time that you need to work by 30 minutes because of delaying your employees, because new employees have to read into the material and so on, and you have the salary of 50K per year, then your total business case, and also with 20% of improvement potential, your total business case will be 570,000 euro per year. And this is something that, of course, is based on these assumptions that you all see on the screen, like 20,000 multi-hops, time for the multi-hop, and so on. But as it is an example calculation, I just wanted to give you the feel how to do that. You can just plug in your numbers and say, well, for me, it's 300,000. Well, for me, it's 5 million, depending, of course, on the scale of your operations. Another business case is risk reduction that you can achieve with AI. This is very simple. The affected value per year multiplied by improvement potential thanks to AI. Here as an example, you can have the payments of 500,000 per year because of SLA breaches. And if 20% of them you can avoid by using AI applications, well, your business case will be 100,000. Again, change assumptions, changes the business case, but it's pretty clear that the sum can be very significant. The last example is about direct cash effects, where you would just calculate the baseline revenue, the profit margin that you have on that revenue, and the improvement potential that you can achieve with AI. In this example, let's say you have 100,000 customers that you're talking to about a new, more expensive contract. Let's say they have 4% conversion. The contract costs you costs the customer 30 euro additional euro per month, and with 20% margin and 20% AI-related conversion increase, you would land at 288,000 euro for this particular use case. This one will be not per year. I mean, this will be per year if the customer stays with you longer than 1 year. But in this particular case, I decided to finalize it. Let's say customer sticks with the tariff for 1 year. Again, in total, as you can see, is a bunch of money that you can achieve. And well, how you do that? Well, AI use cases that are related to that, we have mentioned them in the previous webinars. For the efficiency, you can use process mining analytics, urgency detection, and ticket tagging to decrease the number of unwanted actions and multi-hops that you have in your process. For risk reduction, you can predict resolution times and use chatbots to hold on within your SLA limits. and to make the cache effects better, you can use your website analytics and upsells predictions to identify the customers that are more likely to convert, and offer them a new contract, a new tariff that you would like them to buy. Yeah, so this is a simple business case calculation that you can do pretty much in any use case that you have. Of course, the formula and the numbers will change based on your assumptions, but as you can see, you can achieve pretty much direct financial impact with AI. If you got more questions about methodology, please write them in the Q&A. For now, we'll quickly jump into the interview. I'm seeing that we are short on time, but this interview, I think we can fit in a couple of minutes, Olga, right? Considering that we also spoke about a couple of things in the presentation. With that being said, I would kick it off. Hello, thanks for being here with us. Thanks for participating in the webinar. Thanks for sharing the information about the objectives and the KPIs and everything. I have a couple of questions to you. So the first one would be, I'd like to know, based on your work experience in customer service tracking, is it only important for customer service providers or other users and use cases?
Thank you for having me here. Yes, the question is very good because I know that customer service sometimes is seen as only B2C business feature maybe, but I realized actually any business should be, they are mostly like all client-centric now. All businesses are talking about this thing that we should be client-centric, we should be thinking as clients. So it's really super essential to analyze also how customer service is working. So it doesn't matter if you are an e-commerce business or even a B2B business, you have a customer as maybe other company or a physical person. So you have always to provide some sort of service, whether it's for example, car configurate and then a contact of a person in a real dealership, or if you're delivering products and stuff, or if it's a B2B and you sell into other big suppliers some tools and stuff. So I think customer service nowadays is one of the key things to provide and to analyze also, because so you see the customer satisfaction better and you understand how to make your product better, how to develop your business, and yeah, that's the direct feedback also from the customer is coming from this source.
Okay, cool. Oh, sorry. And what do you think is the most important component of getting useful data from your project? How do you do that? If everybody needs that, how they all do that?
Well, so yeah, this is the part of what we talked about. I cannot stress enough how important it is to define the measurement model before you start gathering the data. And if you want to get the really useful data, you need to think about like what you want to get. You also mentioned that sometimes some customers, they are just like implement AI and analytics just for the case of just to be there, just to track all the buttons, just to track all the filled out forms. But then they think like, okay, I will check the data later. But it's important to think why and what you want to implement and what do you want to get beforehand before you do all this work, because it's also a cost for business. If you're implementing too much, it makes your website heavy, it's an effort of your team, it's it's like an unnecessary thing. So if you think about the preparation is the key, yeah, if you think beforehand about everything you want to gather and you document it, point, it's also very important to have it somewhere,
which nobody does, like ever.
Yeah. No, for example, as a external consultant, normally you come in sometimes in projects and you have to start from from the scratch, and it's good if a team did some work previously. It's so important to have it documented in a Confluence or in any other way. And also when I'm working, I always try to create the best clear documentation possible, because I know I'll be leaving and people have to work with this afterwards. So it's definition, documentation, and clear set of KPIs and targets, because if you've done this work, you don't have to, people sometimes don't do this work because they think, okay, it's too big, it's too methodological, but actually when I work, I break it down to a simple Excel table, which you can see on one sheet, and you can see clearly like what is the business about and what we're going to track. And then you can transfer all this in your analytics requirements, AI requirements, whatever other systems you need to get the data and to present to a customer.
Yeah, that's cool. That's also reminded me of a question. Well, how does it all relate together? And when we have data from so many sources, how does analytics relate to that? Why do we need to do it? Why is it important for our projects?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. And sometimes you also have to be in the role like of project manager a little bit, because as an analyst, you understand who I have to work with. It's can be also a UX team, a BI team, a developer who is fixing, tickets to make the feature exist on your website, and you need to explain them, okay, for this feature I need the tracking, please don't touch the code, or please implement this part of the code, this snippet.
Please don't touch the code.
Yeah, so it's very important to work all together and have a very good project management, and that's the part of the process, because as you've shown in this presentation also, these all parts, like all these sources of data, and people are standing behind them, and it's very important to organize them in the right way, so we don't have a mess but have clear strings of data which are analyzable.
Yes, that's totally right. Totally right. I've spoken a lot about the technology and different systems in the past webinar also. Again, if somebody wants to know more, you can request the presentation from Pau. But with that, Olga, I would say let's keep it going. We have just a couple of minutes until 7. Thanks a lot for your input today. I've learned a lot. It was pretty cool, and always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, too.
Yeah, one second. Ask us questions, because the Q&A session will come just in a minute. Before that, I quickly would go to the next steps. Well, you can say, hey, Ola, hey, Dennis, that's been amazing, but what do we do now? Well, a couple of things. First, you need to assess your IT landscape and data landscape. You need to understand which IT systems do you use. Do you have some in-house expertise? The kind of analytical and data science profiles, you have to know which data is available and how good it is. Because this will in turn play into which kind of applications you can use. Would be the next step. Discover AI applications that we mentioned, or some other. But again, first you need to know which data you have, because you can have a best AI use case and application, but if the data is not there, it's better for a pilot at least to use something you already have. With that in mind, book a call with Pau. Talk to us again if you need to understand how your data landscape looks like. If you need to discuss AI use cases, if you need to know what is the next step, how you can act, get in touch with Pau, give him a call, and together we will help you do this next step and actually create something great with artificial intelligence.
Sorry, Dennis, just send me an email.
Yeah, and here's the Pau's email on the slide.
Exactly, on the slide on the left hand, and we'll organize a call and a discussion, and we can help you to understand better what is the question.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be our ask for you. If you're interested, reach out to Pau. And for now, I would say let me go quickly through the questions. There are a couple of them we have it in the chat. We're not seeing Olga Badeni. There was a technical problem. Question from Boris. Hi, Olga. Olga, can you see the chat?
Yeah, I've read the question. I can quickly answer.
Okay.
It depends on what you want to analyze. It's again the why question should be first. But what I think.
Sorry, Olga, for a second. I'm not sure that everybody can see it. Just explain the question quickly.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. I'd like your opinion according to unique visitors versus visits in Adobe Analytics. It's very often said that unique visitors no longer make sense in most cases, since many users delete cookies, do not log in, or surf the internet from various devices, so you can no longer track the metric properly. In case of Google Analytics, goes different, especially if the users use Chrome. What is your opinion about this topic? So Boris, I already said, so it's important to understand like why you want to analyze them, but so for which case? Mostly in cases for my customers, we used to analyze visits because unique visitors are not such an accurate metric because you can have multiple devices. You browse the website from your phone, from your laptop and iPad, and you create already 3 unique visitors, whereas it's actually you as a physical person, it's the only one. So the only solution here can be to track real people on your website, only if you have a login on your website, or you can give this unique visitor ID and identify and again stitch multi-device and multi-channel visits in visitors in one person, but it's not out of the box from tracking system, so you need to do a little bit of make an effort. So for general traffic understanding, visits is a better metric because it's a session, and you can also, you probably know that visits, you can also adjust how long the visit goes. Like if it's half an hour of inactivity, you can also adjust this metric, and Adobe Analytics also. And it depends. If you really want those unique people, so try to the approach with the unique visitor ID, given it with some extra technology, or just stick with visits metric for the first.
Mm-hmm.
But I see the Pau also answered here, so there could be another view. So it's again, it depends, what you want to get.
As always. Thanks, Olga. Thanks, Boris. Pedro is asking, Dennis, I see your Exemplary team only techies. When piloting B2B, you need business context and so on. Yeah. Pedro, yes, you're totally right. You're totally right. I had a slide, if you've seen in the. Sanjay, I already noticed the Q&A. I will come to them in a second. Thanks. Sorry, Pedro. To your question, I had a slide. If you've been in the very first webinar, I had a slide with the business and tech and their skills and so on. It was kind of a lot, so it just didn't fit in the webinar because I had a lot of content here. But you're totally right. You need first of all some kind of sponsor from the business side, CIO, CEO, that would push the project forward. Somebody that wants to actually do it. You need also to have some kind of business champion, a person that is really interested, genuinely interested for whatever reason in implementing the analytical project, and also some people who are line workers. If you're talking about customer service, you need customer service reps in your team as well. You need to understand how they work and why they work like it. So it's definitely like that. Paulo had an answer. Sanjay. Okay, Sanjay, I'm coming to your question. What are the top 1 or 2 customer service problem statements you worked on, and what solution did finally work? Well, the top 1 or 2 was probably process mining and the resolution time predictions. That's what worked, basically. What exactly worked, if you mean the model, I don't remember which model worked. It's been a year ago for that, more than a year for that project. I don't remember the exact model. But we basically laid out the process of customer service. We identified the bottlenecks, and we identified those that are the most critical for the resolution times, and we tried to predict in which kind of cases, for which kind of tickets they occur. Based on the tabular data, in that case, we were not reading the ticket text, like descriptions, too much. So there was features more like device, category, when the ticket was submitted, and so on. Category mentioned, urgency, and so on. And they worked pretty well. I mean, we were able to predict the delays. Pedro is asking, also here in the Q&A, finding a good data scientist is very hard. One that knows our business even harder. How to accelerate the learning curve for an outsourced data scientist to understanding our business context so the data will bring the appropriate insights. Let them ask you questions, because I mean, it's kind of sounds stupid, but unfortunately, many businesses, they kind of assume more knowledge in you as a data scientist than you actually have. which is a problem, because if you feel in the conversation, and it's a very human thing, right? It's not something that you write on the project management plan. It's something like if you feel you can just ask a bunch of questions, then pretty quickly you understand it. It's like I don't know, in the university, if you were in the small group, usually it's much better for learning, and also the KPI, the professor to student ratio, is very important because of that, because you have the possibility to ask more questions. The same thing goes here as well. If your data scientist can ask you whatever they want without being kind of looked at weirdly, something like, oh, how come you don't know how machinery business works, then they will learn much quicker. That's one thing. Another thing, try to involve them with the line workers, so not just the CEOs and management and so on. Give them opportunity to actually work for a day, for a week, yeah, hand in hand with your line workers that are actually doing the job. With Corona times, it's of course harder, but at least give them the possibility to just freely talk to them. Sanjay is asking another question, and that's the last one, I believe, and then we'll wrap it up. Sanjay is asking, what variety and depth of data did you use for auto-escalation and urgency detection for a ticket? Well, on auto-escalation, I haven't worked personally. It was another team, so I actually don't know what they have used. For urgency detection, where's the things that I have mentioned already? There was the time, device, the user, were the features. The data that we used was from the ITSM system. We did not use third-party systems, I believe. For that use case, I don't think we used third-party systems, to be honest. It was ITSM system data, basically, the ticket data, ticket description, and other ticket features that we had. So it was actually relatively simple. I mean, that's also one of the things to demystify AI. It doesn't have to be extremely complex. It doesn't have to involve 5 data sources and 50 different models. It just doesn't. It can work in a relatively simple environment. It doesn't always do that, but often it does. Okay, Sanjay, you also have a webinar, AI in healthcare. Okay, cool. If you need speakers, you can also reach out to us. I'm pretty good in touch with AI and healthcare speakers. Let us know. With that being said, I think if there are no more questions, we're a bit over time. Seems to be a habit for my webinars. I'm sorry for that. Pau, do you want to say concluding words?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Dennis, and thank you very much, Olga. I think it's been very, very interesting all what you have explained about customer service or analytics data. So we hope to have you again soon. And this has been the last of the 3 webinars, right? We have spoken about the use cases, about technologies, and today about methodologies. I think it's been super interesting and yeah, and quite fruitful. So thank you very much, and looking forward to seeing you again. So, well, I mean, as we said, if you need anything, just drop off an email. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. It was a pleasure to talk to all of you, and see you soon. Thanks a lot.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.